Well, thank you for being here for the Southern Gospel Music Guild Industry Forum. Before we get started with today's topic, let me just say a quick word about the Southern Gospel Music Guild. The SGMG is a collection of industry professionals who have come together to combine and pool their resources for the betterment of the industry, for the growth of the industry, for greater awareness, and to educate, enable, and facilitate industry professionals to do what they do it better, and take it to the next level. So we're not unlike the craftsman and merchant guilds of old. We're a collection of professionals that have come together, pooling our resources for the good of each other, for the good of the industry. If you'd like to be involved in those efforts, some of the things we do to build awareness, our Harmony Honors presentations that we've done on TBN in the past, that's one of our brand awareness projects. And our educational projects are these forums that we've been doing. So if you'd like to join with us and help direct where the organization goes from here, I'd love to talk to you about membership afterwards. And I'll refer you after that to Becky Simmons, who is our membership chair. So we can do what we do better the more members we have. So we'd love to talk to you about that. Now on to today's forum. There's been a lot of interest in this from the time that we announced that we were going to do this forum on streaming. There's a lot of strong feelings about this on both sides of the issue. I got to say this quick word. Tim Menzies caught me in the lobby there, professional songwriter and all, and he said, "You know, I love the fact that y'all are doing this forum on streaming and giving away admission. That's perfect." So he wins the one-liner for the day. But yeah, a lot has been said about the meager compensations that are provided to the creative side via streaming, and there's some good points to be made on that. But we as an organization were thinking, look, if streaming is here to stay, and it probably is, if streaming is the preferred method of entertainment delivery, which it is, and assuming that we're not going to be able to stand against this tsunami and hold back the waters, which is a pretty safe bet, are there methods and techniques we could utilize to capture revenue that we're not currently capturing? Is there a way that we can get this to work for us? And so that's really what we're focusing on today, is how to do that. We've got a great panel that's going to speak to this issue. It was widely known that part of the remedy that was needed was a legislative remedy. The law really had not caught up with the technology. And if the creative side was going to have a chance of being fairly compensated, there was going to need to be a legislative remedy. And the first important step was made last year with the passage of the Music Modernization Act. And someone who actually helped in the crafting of that is going to be our first speaker. He's president of Day One Records, vice president of New Day Distributors. He's actually a licensed attorney, Juris Doctor at Belmont. I'm sorry, what's that from the crowd? Is there heckling from the crowd, did I hear? Ed, everybody makes fun of attorneys until they need one. He got his MBA in finance and international business at Chicago University. Before that, he got his undergrad at Notre Dame in banking. Like I say, he helped craft the legislation. He was actually present at the signing ceremony in the White House when the bill was signed into law. He's got a lot of other credentials, but I think you're all sufficiently impressed. Please make welcome Mr. Ed Leonard.
Streaming scares the heck out of me, but not nearly as much as free downloads and music piracy that we saw with Napster back, 20 years ago. And it's here to stay, and we're going to work our way through, what it is, and then why we need to be involved, and then how we get involved. And we've got two incredible speakers coming up after you endure mine. And I'm going to give an overview right now of just kind of where we are with regard to streaming. So here's here's the state of Christian and gospel music, and Southern gospel is a part of this bigger pie. We're seeing a shift from physical, obviously, to digital and streaming, and it's occurring quickly. We had physical and digital for quite a while, digital being iTunes downloads, basically, and Amazon downloads. But streaming has really taken over, and it's a very enjoyable experience. I'm a Spotify user mostly, and it's like a big, giant jukebox, where you can play everything you want for $10 a month, basically. And if you're willing to listen to ads, it's $4 or something like that. The physical format is still breathing, however, especially in our genre, for all formats, but mostly ours, and classical and jazz, and I'll get into that in a second. Mainstream stores are shrinking their carrying of physical CDs. So you got Walmart that if you've been in a Walmart lately, you can see their CD and DVD section is not anywhere near what it was, even 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Lifeway Christian stores on the Christian storefront, they're closing all of their locations this year, going digital. Basically, Lifeway.com will replace what their physical stores were, and they hope it'll replace the number of touch points they can have with their consumers. But certainly physical sales will go down as a result of that in the Christian market. But the Christian and gospel independent stores are poised for growth, because if those stores remove themselves from a location, the independent stores are just going to do better, because people do want the experience still of having a physical unit and shopping and being encouraged by the people that they deal with when they shop. So a couple little fun facts for everybody. These are recent things, and then I'll get into some historical information. But the Consumer Technology Association said that the U.S. music market revenues are up 12% so far this year to $9.8 billion. Subscription revenues are up 32% to $5.4 billion. It's the third straight year of double-digit growth for streaming. There's an average of 50 million subscribers to each platform. And then for us, for Southern gospel music, Apple, I'll just speak for Daylon. Apple is our biggest account for streaming, followed by Pandora, then Amazon, then YouTube. And of course, Facebook is adding music, and that shows a lot of promise. I don't think they've figured out exactly how they're going to monetize that and how they're going to do it, but they've gotten into the music world. And a lot of this is being driven by the increase in sales of wireless earbuds, like Apple, the earbuds you get, and of course the smart speakers like Alexa. They expect 35 million of those devices to be sold this year. And so when you're using your Alexa and you say, "Hey Alexa, play me some Southern gospel music," right? That's what we're talking about. In order to have that happen, you've got to have a subscription to one of these services for your music to pop up. So that is going to drive the growth pretty significantly. Nielsen, the company that they survey television viewership, and they also do a lot of data analysis on music. They report for the first half of 2019 that streaming is 78% of all music consumption. And they do this by the dollars, right? They follow the dollars, and they try and equate the units of a physical unit to streaming revenues and a digital unit to streaming or to physical revenues, so that we can all understand it. The physical is only 11% of music consumption so far in the first half of this year, and digital is at 11% as well. Now, the good news for us, at least in terms of giving us a little more time to get up to speed, is that for Christian and gospel music, physical is still 25% of consumption. 59% of that of our consumption is streaming. So that puts us in the same category as jazz and classical, and actually rock music is right in that same range as we are. But to show you where it's going, country right now is 14% physical and 73% streaming. Latin is 4% physical, and pretty much the rest of it streaming. And of course, pop is, I believe, 9%, something like that. So it gives you an idea of where we are in relation to the other forms of music. and this will help a little bit as well. So this gives you an historic or a historical perspective of what's going on. This is physical album sales for Christian and gospel music only from 2015 to 2018, so through the end of last year. So you see in 2015 we had 15.6 million units of physical albums sold, and then last year it was 8 million. For digital track sales, again, iTunes, we had 27.8 million tracks sold in 2015, down to 15 million tracks sold in 2018. But streaming has gone the opposite way, right? So we had 6.6 billion streams of our music in 2015 and 17.8 billion streams of our music in 2018. So when you equate this all together, and you remember we talked about, or I mentioned just a minute ago, equivalency. So a physical album, what you get when a CD sells, they do that. They come up with that for when a track sells, and also when streaming revenue comes forward. So if you look here and you equate it all together based on the money, you see equivalent albums of 22.8 million in 2015, dropping down to 19 million in 2017, but then popping up to 21 million in 2018. So the music business that was decimated by online piracy like Napster has found a way. They found their way back to monetize music out of that environment, and streaming is the predominant way that is happening. So what can we do, right? We can have discussions like this, which I think is very helpful. First off, we can make great music, because nobody's going to want to stream anything or even buy anything for that matter if your music is not great. Don't abandon physical goods prematurely. Auto companies, we've heard they're taking CDs out of the automobile, and they are, but they are also starting to add them back into some of their models, which is driven by consumer demand. Consumers have said, we want CDs, we want a place to play this large collection of material that we have, and would you give that to us? So they're adding back CD players into their automobiles, and there's been a resurgence in vinyl. For this year, we've released vinyl on Joseph Habedank. We released vinyl on Jason Crabb, Stephen Curtis Chapman, an artist that we distribute, and those things are going well. So people they have an appreciation for that, owning something physically, and then the sound that it makes when you play it on a turntable. Something, I won't get into this right now, but look it up. You'll see how important it is. But get your metadata right. So every time everything that you do in the streaming economy, the way you get paid is based on metadata. And if that concept is foreign to you, again, we're not going to go into it right now, but look it up. It's basically who's writing the songs. What are your lyrics? Who publishes the writing of the songs? How long is the song? You know, what genre is it in? What other genres could it be considered in? I mean, there's just a variety of different things. Of course, ISRC codes for the individual songs and UPC codes for the entire album. You have to have those. And Lauren and Scott will talk more about this, but help the digital service providers, the streaming companies, help them help you. They want to know what your story is behind the music that you're providing them. What is the song about? They want background information. They really are interested in diving deeply into the music that people are creating. And then you got to connect your fans to this market. And I know there's hesitancy to start because we don't want to give up physical and send people to streaming. But for the people that are using streaming, we want to be able to connect them and let them know where our stuff is. And then if they're not, then we tell them a CD, or some combination of that. And then I think it's important to work with professionals. Spotify just dropped their independent artist direct plugin, probably from pressure from the labels, but it really is an important thing to work with professionals when you are dealing with the streaming world, because it's like they are the new stores, right? And no individual artist is ever going to be able to get in touch with the buyer at Walmart. And if you think about it from that perspective, it's relationships. And people like Lauren have the relationships Tim and his team at Syntax, they have the relationships. Our team, we work with them all the time. At Crossroads, they work with their DSP people all the time. So I think those are some important tips. I wanted to take an aside for a second before we get into more streaming and talk a little bit about advocacy that, if you guys are okay with that Clark mentioned. And organizations in Christian music are working on your behalf. The Gospel Music Association, Christian Music Trade Association, which is the labels, the Christian Music Publishers Association, which are all the songwriters and publishers. They are very involved in advocacy, and we're very involved in the support of the Music Modernization Act, which got passed last year. So just know that that's going on, and how you can help there is, when called upon, certainly contact your legislator, or act in support by joining some of these organizations that are working on your behalf. There's a new register of copyrights, who is the person, Karen Temple, who is the person kind of in charge of the ownership of all of our music and how that's treated. So that's a very important thing that we helped work along with other music organizations like the National Music Publishers Association, the Recording Industry Association, and Sound Exchange, to help get that to be a person who is pro-copyright as opposed to anti-copyright. This slide is about the Music Modernization Act, and basically it's, while you can read this, and I won't go through each thing, but there are a few things that are important for us, and that is that the streaming revenues in the future are currently governed by rate courts and such. And in the past, there was a limit on the kind of evidence that could be put into play in those courts to determine what the rates are going to be going forward. And they have shifted that standard to a willing buyer, willing seller standard for songwriters and publishers, which is really good news for writers. Probably the biggest thing to come out of this was the establishment of the Mechanical Licensing Collective, which helps the digital service providers get licensing for the songs that are being played, because it's very difficult. Can you imagine all the songwriters of all the songs that they play on those platforms, and how difficult that is to get that all worked out and get the right people paid? So there will be a collective established by next year, by 2021, I believe, that will be responsible for putting songwriters and publishers together with the digital service providers so that they can get paid. And then be on the lookout for that, because if you're an independent publisher especially, you're going to have to be aware that that is going on. We talked a little bit about advocacy, what you can do. Stay connected and informed is the number one, but you can subscribe to email newsletters and such, and let your voice be heard when it's appropriate, when there's an issue. So I want to turn it over now to somebody we work with quite a lot and have for years and years, The Orchard. And Lauren Casper has been gracious enough to give us her time to come here today. She directs label management for The Orchard, which is a division of Sony Music, and she spent much of her career with digital service providers, specifically Apple, and also Beats Music, and in a variety of roles there. She's from Southern California, but now loves her experience in Nashville, and her first job was at Disneyland. She was just talking about that. She conducted the Casey Jr. train and was at Disneyland. A little fun fact. All right, Lauren Casper, please make her welcome.
So thanks for having me today. I've been working for The Orchard for about a year, and I joined our team here in Nashville to help grow and represent the folks that are here. Obviously, with all of the digital service providers opening up offices in Nashville and having a more of a focus on the creative community here, we felt it was really important to represent not only our labels, but also grow our label base here. So we've been here about a year. We're over on 1900 Wedgwood, and so we welcome you to come chat with us if you're ever in town. I wanted to, as as Ed said, I've been in streaming for about 10 years, and I've worked with a variety of different genres. I was always sort of the outlier person at these accounts. I worked a lot with classical. I worked a lot with jazz. I know those struggles of those niche genres where the audience hasn't quite caught up to the current consumption model. And so hopefully I can, give you a little bit of a taste of some ideas and things that you can do. A lot of my slides here are going to be very Orchard generic, but I thought it's a good opportunity to look at the holistic nature of how the current streaming economy works and what are the areas of focus that you should have. So, the Orchard is known for being innovative in technology. We've been around since '97. We were one of the very first digital music distributors, focusing mostly on independent music. We are New York based, but we have offices all over the world. We're very focused on helping independent creators achieve their vision through technology and relationships and sales. We have offices everywhere you'd ever want to go on a vacation. So that's a great, and having those boots on the ground help us to really have an impact globally with our artists. As Ed mentioned, Latin music is almost 90% streaming. Well, that's one of our greatest successes, and that's been a big part of what our COO, Colleen, has been focused on over the last several years, which is growing some of these outside markets. So, while this is a very American genre and it has its roots here in the South in America, you should also look internationally to see where you might have new audiences to reach. And while these are all the services that the Orchard provides, I think it's a good example of all of the different elements that come into where your revenue is coming from in digital. We offer YouTube video channel management, which is a huge sector of our business. We work with massive Latin artists. I think Azuna has the #1 YouTube channel in the world, and we manage that for him. And so YouTube is a very multi-layered service that's not only video distribution, but it's also revenue generating from the other content that you produce that's not just music. We have fingerprinting and performance rights claiming technology. We work with the DSPs and provide retail marketing and support there. We have in-house digital advertising, royalty solutions, distribution. So you see, we're kind of like a massive in-house operation. We do everything except for press and radio. And those are the two things that I think are most important from a label perspective to be working on. You need to get your story across to press journals where people are reading about music, and you need to get on the radio for those genres where radio still matters, like country and the Christian music world. These are some of the projects that we worked with New Day on, and I'd like to say I did get to start from beginning to end with Stephen Curtis Chapman, and we did have a #1 bluegrass album with him. So that was a really exciting challenge, and I think the first opportunity for Ed and I and his team to really get to work together, and I think that's a great example of somebody who's taken advantage of every element of a campaign and executed really well on the digital side to help grow his audience outside of his normal genre space. And, part of what I think is really important to communicate to your audiences is that I think often when you're in a smaller genre, you have ways of working and things that you find important. But when you're launching an album campaign, it's really important to think about updating and creating a story across every space where your music lives on the internet. So going back to Stephen Curtis Chapman as an example, they, from the onset, built a lot of creative that was then used across his YouTube channel, his Facebook channel, on his website, in all of his social posts. And all of those things had a branded look and feel that told the story of deeper roots. And that was through video content that lived on his Facebook page or on his YouTube channel. That was through the marketing efforts, that was paid advertising and media. And that story helped grow the audience for and awareness for this record. And previously, this album was available through Cracker Barrel, so there was a physical retail element to the campaign, so some folks did know him through that. But I think if you were going to go Google an artist, look at what they did across all of his channels, and you'll see immediately the album being promoted in a variety of different ways that are engaging and drawing his audience in to know more about the story of this release. So that's what we always try to do through marketing. It's like, how do we build the audience? How do we engage fans into the content about more than just the music? And how do we create demand for listening to the songs through compelling social content, compelling videos and behind the scenes footage, or even just creative and interactive designs on their webpage to help kind of spark interest to follow the call to action to go listen or go stream the album on whatever service that they use. These are just a couple of, we're a wide variety of genres, but you have to think about, what is your website going to look like? What is your how are the advertisements going to tie into the rest of the campaign? We've done things like a music video, a video game on an artist's website, to just creative social content for catalog artists like Al Green. I just wanted to have some. YouTube is such a hub of information, and I think especially in genres like this where people haven't truly converted to a paid subscription service yet. So that's sometimes the first entry point for an artist, because it's free and it's freely available to go visit or watch content on those platforms. So YouTube is people often think, I think in the music world, we're used to it just being a place where you go post a music video. But in fact, YouTube is a hub for much more than that. And the more you can think creatively about, if my artist has a music video, but also they're amazing live performers, how can I create a series or a series, or like almost like a TV show for this artist that can kind of let his fans and audience pull the curtain back a little bit and understand more about what they do day to day, showcase their personality and their talent. Doing that through YouTube is a great way to help build that audience on a digital platform where there's no barriers to entry. So nobody has to pay to go watch these videos on YouTube, and you can still make and generate revenue from it, but you can also grow their marketing and their audience through that channel. And we found a lot at Apple, actually, that YouTube was a great driver of streams and downloads on the store. So utilizing and optimizing those channels and making sure you have marketing links that drive into all the different services or offer the option to customers is a great way to pull people in to those other networks where they're consuming music. Ed spoke a little bit about this, but not to be ignored is all of the other revenue streams that come from streaming beyond the master rights, which is, international neighboring rights. At the Orchard, we are global, so we have offices in all these territories, and so we're actually able to collect on all of that, and that's a lot what we do with New Day. Managing, I think, a scary piece for most people when you think about DMCA takedowns and managing your content is that what happens when people post stuff I don't like. It's challenging. We offer that through the Orchard. But to the meat of my presentation, I wanted to give you guys kind of like a little update. These slides are from May, so it's not 100% accurate anymore, but I wanted to kind of walk through some of the major platforms and their focuses, as well as some numbers. So we all know Spotify. They've been here in the US now for like 9 years. Most people think about Spotify, it's like the Kleenex of music streaming when they're a brand name in of themselves. They've recently launched in MENA in North Africa. We are actually one of their first preferred partners. So when you talk about working professionals, we have a close relationship with them, and we work very diligently to meet their standards of delivery. And these things are important because when it comes to asking for favors or getting their attention, knowing that you are a partner that works hard, is accountable to what they need, that definitely gets you to the front of the line with them. They've launched global marquee advertising and vertical videos in the last year. They're very focused on podcasts. They just bought a couple of companies this year, and I think they have a job out for original content. So they are really trying to become more than just music streaming. They want to become your audio destination for listening. And I think focusing more on that will tie the bridge between podcasting and music, and trying to find ways to collaboratively work on their platform is going to be important. They have over 1,000 personalized editorial playlists now, which is great for niche genres like gospel music, where the programming might not be there yet. But as a listener, if I am following a lot of Christian artists and I'm interacting with that playlist and those music, on Fridays when I get a New Music Friday, I'm going to see a lot of those artists coming directly to me. And that's beneficial to you because these people actually want to listen to your music. They're going to be more engaged with the music that's coming in to them through personalized playlists than they likely would be through a generic Spotify playlist. And this is the same with Apple. They have a new music playlist that you receive every Friday. As they get to know me as a listener or your audience, they're going to know, oh, that they're interested in this music, and we know this music is coming. It's going to be presented to people who are more likely to play. And that's actually, for an independent release or a niche genre release, so much more important than getting on Hot Country. Like, people are going to they're going to skip through stuff that they're unfamiliar with, but if they have some small connection to those playlists, they're more likely to listen through, which is beneficial for you guys in growing your monthly listeners, growing your audience on those spaces. Apple Music, which I was formerly of, has now launched in 50 territories, and they're at, I believe, 60 million paying subscribers globally. They recently just rebranded all of their playlists to be less genre focused and more audience based. So if you look, they've changed some of their playlist names from like A-list country to country roads, and that's kind of important because their thinking is more about what kind of audience, what kind of listener wants to find this playlist. So it's more about context, it's more about branding than which genre you fit in. And as you guys probably know, a lot of times things walk the line. It might be slightly bluegrass. It might be more gospel, traditional focused. So finding a home for those playlists where it doesn't necessarily need to fit into one genre is becoming really important for them. They are still really focused on content, music videos. We are also preferred partner with them. They've launched a new Beats One, which is their like, I forget the word for it, like a regular radio station where it's on 24/7 and you tune in. Their station there, that's still very much focused on hip hop and current popular music, but I believe that over time they'll be growing that. And they're also very focused on catalog, so don't ignore your catalog on these services. You should be strategizing how to market those releases so that you can kind of build up streams and audience on some of your more popular catalog, so that as you go into the new world of streaming, that evergreen catalog that you've had physically also has an audience digitally, because good songs never really go away. People still want to listen to them, and they want to recreate their collections at home on whatever platform they're using. YouTube Music, 63 territories and 10 million paying subscribers. They're live in territories like Japan and Ukraine and Portugal now. They just launched a great feature, which I've used a couple of times with our artists. It's called Community Premieres. So you can actually schedule a music video to be premiered, and anyone that's a subscriber to that channel will get a notification to tune in at that time. I've seen really good success with this feature, and I think for artists to be able to directly interact around a video rather than have to rely on a press premiere or something where people are maybe probably going to miss it at that time, but to actually get a notification on your phone for somebody that you follow on that space and get involved in a music video premiere is a great advantage, and I recommend you checking it out. You also can now add a hashtag to videos, so if you're coming up with a creative campaign, maybe that speaks to the message of the music, you can add that there. And they've just launched an ad-supported tier on their smart home device, Google Home. So to speak more on areas of growth, I mean, voice-activated devices in home, I think, are the future, especially for genres where we don't have a lot of editorial curation. Being able to ask for music that you want to be played is key. Moving on to Amazon, I just think, speaking about this account, we've seen a tremendous growth from them this year. An article just came out yesterday that Amazon's growing 70% year over year in audience. And I think a lot of that does have to do with today, I think it's Prime Day. How many Echo devices do you think they're going to sell? They're bundling that with everything. And I've seen that, especially, and I truly believe with genres like gospel and classical and jazz, as we reach that saturation point with having these devices in your home, more and more people are going to be enjoying music again. I see it with my own family. All of a sudden they're listening to music in the evening and they can just simply ask for it. So a lot of what I think your guys' jobs as artists and labels is to teach people how do you use these things that you already have, and reminding them through marketing, hey, ask Alexa to play our new song, through the channels that you have available to find your audience and bring them into that, and teach them how to use these services, teach them through example of how to find your music. You will see your audience converting there. So, they're very much focused on converting people to Amazon Music Unlimited, but they recently launched a mid-tier subscription where if you have an Echo device, you can subscribe with ads, and all of a sudden more music is unlocked for you. So I think we're going to see that section of their business grow massively as they continue to sell more and more of these devices. And if you are there early on, you're going to be a part of that growth. And that's why your metadata is so important. Make sure your artist names are correct and your track names and your performers, so that as we go 5 or 6 years in the future, all of these databases are correct with the right information, and you're going to be able to say, like, hey, who played on this record with this artist? It'll be able to serve up actual results in the future. Deezer is a radio company that had been mostly in Europe, but they continue to be a big part of the Middle East and North Africa. They likewise recently overhauled their playlist covers and things to be more thematically branded. And Ed touched on this a little bit. Facebook and Instagram are really getting more involved in music. They don't currently have a detailed monetization strategy, but you'll see that music is live through Instagram stickers. Facebook Live has a lip sync feature, which can be utilized beyond just actually lip syncing like TikTok, but actually how do you create a music video from that? How do you engage fans to sing along to songs and post them? Social music stickers are coming to Facebook stories, and your Facebook profiles will be able to have like a song at the front. So like, what song represents me? Maybe it's, I don't know, like Suspicious Minds or something. And so you'll see more people are going to be engaged with music through Facebook. And I think with this audience base, how many of you are on Facebook every day? I'm sure it's probably your biggest market as far as audience and marketing. Like, that's how you're reaching people. That's how church groups are connecting with their members. When you're going to perform at some group like that, my recommendation is to get involved with their Facebook page, post your music, have a link, to your YouTube channel to watch a video about the artist before they perform. Start to unlock some of those features and engage, and you'll be surprised how much of the audience will start to interact with that. So Facebook, luckily has launched. Facebook and Instagram have gotten behind music in a great way. And, 6 years ago, we were just hoping they'd be able to have a player on their website. Now they're doing so much. And so while it's not currently like, they don't think of themselves as a music service, it's still a really integral part of how you can be promoting your music or promoting, your label's music to this audience on Facebook, where the demographic is still pretty old. And while younger people are moving to other things, it's just really where everyone's living with their tablets at home every evening. So my suggestion is to play around with these things, see what works for your customers and your fans, see what drives the most engagement there, and have a strategy for it early on your record release. Pandora is still probably what everybody knows They are very popular in the States, and oftentimes I'm seeing still sometimes the number one service for some of our artists. So they've added 784,000 subscribers this year. They've partnered with SoundCloud, and they were just acquired by SiriusXM. So I expect we're going to see more crossover between those audiences into Pandora in the future. They're still very focused on curating playlists and curating their algorithms, but more changes will come there, I think, over time as they move beyond the sort of basic DMCA streaming audiences. You know, I think one thing I just wanted to get across is that your audiences are already using these services. They are either on an iPad, you know, at home in the evening, looking at Facebook, working on things. So I think the main, if you're trying to move your business from primarily physical to streaming, you have to think about every touch point along that artist's path where people can discover them. So whether that's making sure their website has links to all of these service providers, using something called like a smart link or a pivot link, so that they have options when they click on it to find whatever they're currently using. So, you know, whether they're an Apple Music subscriber or an Amazon subscriber, they can end at a destination where they can consume music. Making sure that your visuals and your aesthetic feeds through the whole campaign, that you have profile pictures for each of your artists on all of these accounts, so that when I, as a listener, if I'm discovering them through something I've read or something I saw on the internet, when I go to look at them, they look real. This is your bin card at a store. This is what they're going to see first. So making sure that you follow through and that there's a good visual look and feel across all of these platforms is really important, because I think that optically it's important to have legitimacy by having press photos up, by having images of the artist, because they're not seeing them live so much anymore. They're not seeing them on a CD. You need to interact with them where they are. And I think that's really, you know, if they go to these destinations and don't see them, it's less appealing, and you have to get them to click on it. You have to get them to engage on it. So there's a lot of best practices, and feel free to, you know, quiz me on them later. But having some thought to how you're presented in the world on the internet is important. And I think a lot of times, I did a lot of work in classical, people don't think about having a photo of the symphony up on their site, but you need that. You need to make that human connection in the digital space so that people can find you and they interact with you and they build a loyalty and trust there. And continuing to message to your audience to follow me on these places so you can find out when I have new music, and growing your subscribers in that space so that when you do have music coming, people are informed about it. And you'll with every release, with every song that gets put out, with every video, that plateau where your streams are will grow to the next level. So consider that as you're working through your campaigns. Prepare ahead of time with how you're going to present that across there, and you'll have more success. As we did with Stephen Curtis Chapman, I think that's a really great example of what it takes to take an audience that's in one space and move them to another. So that's my presentation.
Yeah, it kind of reveals a little bit about my age. But as Clark said, my background is very heavily into sales and distribution. And so what my job primarily is at Crossroads is to try to bring that into this new era of selling. And as a couple of people in the room probably have already heard me say, I believe sales fills the demand that marketing creates. And everything's marketing. So we didn't have necessarily a release in Southern Gospel that, you know, really worked in what we were talking about as far as having a case study. So we got together and we talked about one of our sister labels, Mountain Home, and one of their artists, Balsam Range. And so it's one of the top flight bluegrass groups in the world. And so this particular album may be hard for you to read because we know it's hard for Alexa to pronounce, Aeonic. And we got together as a team. Um, actually, looking at the album in total in the spring of 2018, this is Balsam Range's 9th record. The record before this, uniquely, was done with the Atlanta Pop Symphony. So they took some of their best tunes and put a symphony over them, and they're actually touring that right now. So when we got together with our distribution team, it was, okay, how do we leverage all this, the stuff that's been going on? We've been very privileged with Balsam Range to have them be the IBMA's Entertainer of the Year, I believe twice now, if not 3 times. And so it was trying to approach this from a different perspective than what's been done before in bluegrass and Southern gospel. And so we decided to go the route of releasing singles. Back in the day, we used to release singles before they ever got to be an album. And so we released 3 singles and worked them extremely hard with Balsam Range starting in the spring of 2018. And the one major difference that I'll say in bluegrass radio, singles tend to move quicker than in Southern gospel radio. So that's why we haven't really, as a company, got this down to where we'd like, but we've seen 2 great successes over the last 4 weeks where it's starting to come together. But so we are advancing the launch of the record with these singles, 3 of them. Fortunately, we had 2 that went number 1. Okay, so in going to the DSPs, it's very much like the old school salesman that I've been, where you've got to take this information. You've got to take it to the DSPs because they are now your Walmart's, Targets, Lifeways, Family Christians. They need to know why you're doing what you're doing and why they should give you the space in which to do it. And so we went with the strategy of featuring on the successes that they've had. That's a given. And one of the things that this group brings, which a lot of Southern gospel groups bring also, is their incredible vocals. Not only are they fine musicians, but they are incredible vocalists. So, and they've got a pretty rabid fan base, and I would dare say that most Southern gospel groups have a pretty rabid fan base as well. So it was incumbent upon us to leverage their fan base to go to the DSPs and pre-order, to have that record drop, in January, early January, as a matter of fact. And so, we did a lot of what, Lauren was talking about, using, Facebook, less on YouTube, but a lot of their fan base we see at Facebook. So we chose to concentrate there, along with actually the guys from the stage have been going, hey, you know what? Follow us. Follow us at Spotify. Take your phones out right now. Boom. Do whatever it takes. And so they were encouraging. We had, our release at the DSPs 8 weeks prior to the street date, which I know is a preferred thing for the DSPs to have, the lead time. And so, and in doing that, we also went the route, we didn't dismiss traditional, marketing opportunities, going for, feature articles in Billboard, No Depression, trying to get features at Apple Music, Google Play, iTunes, Amazon. And one of our main objectives was to debut this album at number 1 at Billboard. And we were able to do that. And this particular one, I've been blessed over my career to, have gold records, platinum records, and number 1s and everything else. But this, to me, was a group that was extremely deserving and humble. And we were able to give them, with their 9th album, their first number 1 ever at Billboard, which was, blew them away. And we had a lot of fun doing it. And on that street day, we were able to get features at a good number of places for this particular album. I know Napster has been invoked a few times, but their new service is pretty good. Amazon and Apple Music, as well as Google Play and iTunes. And so for us as a company, what we've been doing is trying to take what we know has worked very well for us in the past, very well for us as an industry in the past, with, as we term it, the old school, marketing, and, just the old school sales, and really bring that into what is happening today. And one of the shifts that we all have had to make is that, Spotify, Apple Music, and Apple Music for me is my service of choice, that these guys can be partners. But the one thing that we have to keep in mind, us as an industry, is we've got to give them reasons to partner with us. We know from statistics that our fans are there. And one of these services that Lauren put up here, one or the other, they are there. That we just need to make sure that our products are up there and that we can lead them there. And I'm very confident that in doing that with the music that we make, we will make great strides into, kind of breaking through on the streaming ground. So that's you, and I know we're going to have questions, I'm sure.
Hopefully you can share the two microphones there, and then I can take this one in the crowd so the people that are watching will be able to hear the question and all. As we're finishing up, is there anything you would like to add to your presentation before we open it up to the floor for questions?
I mean, I think one thing that I just totally forgot to say was that in a lot of cases, we have been talking about this, but like, you have to, just like old school record stores, you have to show services how you can drive people to their storefront. And that's what they really care about. What are your marketing and advertising plans? How are you going to be directing folks to our platform to consume your music on our platform? And that long lead time is super important because they have multiple programming meetings where you need to go into that. So being prepared on the early end with your plan is really important to ending up with those features at the end of the day.
So when you make that pitch to the DSP, what are they wanting to hear? We are driving to your service by doing this. What do they want to hear?
I think that there's no one answer, because I think, if this is a major pop release, they'd want to know how much advertising are you going to spend and how much of your share of marketing voice are we going to get as a service. But I think in this space, just knowing that you do have a plan, that you are going to be utilizing socials and advertising and creating content that will eventually lead people into the music on their service is important. And work with what you have. Not saying you need to go spend a lot of money, but have a plan in place of how are we going to take our fans that we know that are rabid and want this music, how are we going to create a pathway for them to utilize on the music service, whether that's like we have a social plan, we're going to promote a pre-order, and we're going to be doing videos to talk about the songs, and each of those videos will have a marketing link that will drive to different music retailers on there. That's enough. Just creating the plan will lead you eventually to a better plan the next time around, and a better plan the next time around.
Right. And as I say, one of the things that we do, at least I hope we do it most of the time, is provide our distributor with the one sheets. And if any of you know what that is, one sheet is very simply everything you should know about this release on one sheet. Radio markets, why this release is important, what's the song list, and so we feel that if we can create the right narrative for our one sheets, it gives a glimpse to anybody looking at that, the DSPs in particular, or whether it's at one point it used to be Lifeway or Family or whomever, or Target or Musicland. That shows you how far I go back too. It just, in a nutshell, gives you, a quick hit of information that someone sitting at Apple Music could go, okay, I think I get it. And I think this is where I can see this going. And the more information that we can provide and build on, that's why I say with Balsam Range, we've been doing this for several releases, and we've got little nibbles. But with this last one, it kind of all came together, as you said. We keep building upon it and building upon it. It really is not an overnight thing. We've all, as an industry, we just got to keep building this.
And that Balsam Range project was available on streaming before the physical product treated. Is that true? Did I understand you to say that?
Well, it was available for pre-order, but as pre-orders go, they drop on Street Day.
Did you have instant tracks along the pre-order way?
Yeah,
so you're releasing singles ahead of the release?
Releasing singles ahead of the release, and then so they would end up playing into the brass.
That's a great strategy to have multiple songs ahead of a release, because it gives your digital distributor, multiple touch points to talk about the release again. So I know, having sat on the other side at Apple, that, hey, this is the fourth time I've heard about Balsam Range, and there's new information coming in around this next song. It's more likely they're going to pay attention to it. And having that elevator pitch, that one sheet, having a really succinct, like, why should I, of all the music that's coming out this week, why should I care about this one? That's just so important to have that locked in right away, because you have to be, as the label or the artist, you have to be the first person to advocate for that music and shout loud enough that it gets all the way down the chain to the DSP. And as much as we'd like to think that the celestial jukebox of the internet is like this magical place where there's all kinds of shelf space, there's not. There's only so many spots on those stores. And you, just like the old school physical market, you still have to say, like, why should I get a spot there? And if you can do that, and if you can tell that story passionately, then you're going to have more kinds of, on the other end of these things, these music editors, they're music people. They care about music. They really do. There's a lot of steps in between them, but if you can be really earnest in that story and shout loud enough with enough great opportunity for them, they'll get behind it.
That's good. Any questions? Yes, sir. I'm going to get my steps in today.
I'm not really more on a question, but more just kind of backing up, because I know a lot of us in here, all we live is Southern Gospel world, and it's different than everything else. Ed, all you guys know that. We know from experience, with my involvement with Mark Lowry, for example, she mentioned the YouTube doing something there. Be sensible about it. We're doing that with Mark every Monday night. And in the first 24 hours, we're talking 24,000 plus views. That's something to sneeze at. That it all works together, but where we fell as a community of Southern Gospel is our social media. We are horrible at it. So that works hand in hand to make your digital streams work. If you only go and post on Facebook once a month, don't post. You wasted your time. Give them something that they want to see. It's going to go in there. Doing the singles, we just did that last week with an artist on the CCM inspo side that is not known by 99.9% of the people. And we broke the top 100 with it, which is pretty impressive for someone that doesn't have a name. But you have to get back to the nuts and bolts. We want physical sales. We got to realize we're going to have to let go of that. One of the things that we're starting to do at our company is we're holding 2 tracks back for physical sales. And then we're also in some things going to say, hey, you're only going to get these 2 songs if you buy the CD, but you're also only going to get this song if you buy it on digital. And it's a totally different. So we're going to drive them to both platforms. So get outside the box, because if we fail, if Day One fails, I fail. If, these guys right here, Old Pass, fail, it doesn't help any of us. So I'm not afraid to share some information, but I will second, we've seen it firsthand in Southern work. Keep on it. We can fight it, but we're going to lose it.
That's a great point. To build on that, it's easy to sit back and say, hey, show me the money. I hear these horror stories of, one stream equals 0.00. Yeah, just ridiculously small amounts of money, but take heart in the fact that there are now, like I said before, an average of 50 million subscribers to these platforms. And you've got Amazon with growth. I mean, you've got the Alexa machines and the Echo devices coming into pretty much every home at some point. And it's going to be very easy for our market, the older portion of our market, which is a larger portion. It's going to be very easy for them to say, hey, play me the latest Old Path single, or play me the latest album from Old Path. And they're going to have to be tied into some sort of a platform to get that to turn on. And so as those numbers get bigger, as it gets into the hundreds of millions of people, as opposed to the 50 million people, the money is going to get real quick. Okay, you look at Sirius XM and how it started out kind of as a dribble, right? It got real quick at a certain point. It reached a tipping point, and now it is really funding our industry. At least it's doing that for daily. I believe the same thing will happen on the streaming side. Now you can be smart about it, or not smart about it. You can be territorial about it and say, I want them to buy the CD, and I'm all for that. We have artists where we only put up the radio single as it releases to radio, and that is it. And then when the next record drops, we'll drop the old record. Okay, so they get most out of the physical sales that they can possibly get. Like Q said, holding back tracks and making the physical important, or creating some sort of a package at your table that focuses on the physical piece, in addition to getting a T-shirt, or in addition to getting a free download, or whatever it is, to get them to part with that $20, which is what you're really looking for to support your ministry. Those things are all what we need to do, not just as we transition, but going forward. I mean, I don't particularly see the end of the physical format for our genre anytime soon. We still are believers in it. Our whole distribution company is based around selling physical goods to independent stores at this point. So, but it will diminish. It will continue to diminish. People will switch to streaming. The money will get better, and we just have to position. What you're hearing here is, don't delay. Position yourself for success when that tipping point occurs, and start driving the people. If they're not a subscriber to these formats, no matter what you say, it's not going to keep them from buying the physical CD. They want to own that. They want you to sign it. They want to do all those sorts of things. But if they are a streamer, you want to be there. You want your face, your pictures to look great. You want to be giving them content. You want to have them follow you, so that they can get updated on more music that you do.
A lot of us saw a post on Facebook a couple of weeks ago where one of our friends, our artist friends, posted his check. It was 57 cents. And all the 200 plus comments went crazy. And then 2 days later, we had a group that posted theirs from the exact same service for 7,500. What did they do different? They embraced the streaming, worked it just like that. That's a huge difference. Everybody can do math. That's the difference. And the Ball brothers, I'll go ahead and throw their name. They're the ones that made the 7,500 because they embraced it, they pushed it, they worked their social media, they worked with all these entities. So don't let that 57-cent picture, that's not the real picture.
Yeah, so Ed, on your slide earlier, you mentioned digital tracks there and how it's kind of going down. Tell us your opinions about the download services right now in digital tracks. Is that something we as a collective should just look past and not even focus there anymore, or should some attention still be put into trying to get our audience to download our products?
I personally think for us, it's you keep going until it goes away. Mm-hmm. The iTunes store did not go away. It got embedded into the Apple Music store. They did not do away with digital downloads. So you can still buy a full album digital download. You can buy a track-by-track digital download. I would continue to push that until, they decide, to dispense with it. But I don't know that that's anytime soon either. I think people are going to be able to get music how they want to get music. And if they have a streaming subscription, that's great. If they want to buy digital downloads and keep it on their phone or keep it on their devices and own it, because when you stop subscribing to streaming services, guess what happens to the wonderful collection of music that you built up? When you cease your cable subscription, you don't get to see any more, of the cable only shows, right? It goes away. But if you buy something, you will own it forever, at least until it breaks or or something happens with your device.
Just on that point, I think that it's about thinking about when and where you message download. So, some of the pricing strategies, that's still really effective in selling download sales, or when you're having radio success, that's a good time to think about how you're pushing the track download sales. But never, just being aware of sensitivities too, that you should equally be promoting streaming alongside download and not just focusing on download, because you are likely to lose some traction there if you're not also building and showing services that you're promoting what they care about, which is, Apple Music and the streaming services. But those are still really effective, but you think about when it's the best time to promote that message in your campaign. So maybe that's later when the song has had more time to build, and you're more likely to get people to download that song because there's familiarity and a love for it. Whereas in the early part of your campaign, you might be more about getting to know the song. So be promoting the song on streaming services or on playlist. Maybe it's a playlist that you've developed so people can get to know the music before making that commitment to buy.
Lauren, question for you. It's interesting that you've done so much work in niche music, classical and jazz.
I'm a weirdo.
And no, because that's what we are. We're in niche music. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but there has been some criticism about the service providers in the way they divvy up those subscription fees. They don't divvy it up according to the individual subscriber listenership. They divvy it up as platform
on a pro
as a
rata
whole.
share,
So,
right.
as a case in point, a Southern Gospel listener who subscribes to Spotify and listens mostly to Southern Gospel artists, their $9.99 is not going to go to the artist they're listening to. Most of their $9.99 is going to go to the big pop artist that's getting the majority of the plays across the platform. Do you see that changing?
I mean, I can't speak to that probably but I do think that is an important concern in those communities, and probably more so it's just about like track length, especially in classical where the tracks are very long and there's a lot of debate going on around, a 10-minute symphony is not the same as a 3-minute pop song. You can play way more of those individually, and so I do think that there'll be continued debate as those people raise their voices and become more important in that conversation. There's other services that are popping up to serve those communities, and I think you see that through things like Bandcamp, where I saw a lot of jazz artists really focused on that platform because it was a very direct method to reach their fans. That's like equal payment, and same thing with like punk rock and things that are more do-it-yourself. They're very focused on where is that immediate connection to their fan. So while all of these services are important, Ed and I were talking about this, I think you'll naturally kind of find where maybe some of your audience is, and make sure that you, as you learn what services those are, serve those audiences and focus more of your attention in those spaces while not ignoring everything else. But you're going to figure out where, your main revenue streams. Like Ed said, Sirius Radio is really important to his business, as is Apple. Yeah. So as you, over time, engage and learn and practice things, you'll see which things are more important to you. And while I would love for classical audiences to get paid more on an equitable scale personally, I think that the streaming deals have been sort of set, and it's only through advocacy at the governmental level that we are making changes to the way copyright works and how people are paid. And so who knows what will happen in the future.
Well, I'd love to see that be a point of emphasis for advocacy in the future. For Christian music, for jazz, classical, all the other.
Well, I will say, though, that if you flip that on its head, while we may have, let's just say we have 1 million fans paying $10 a month, right? They're getting the lion's share of that. The pop artists are getting the lion's share of that. But at the same time, there's 100 million people that are subscribing to pop for those purposes, and we're getting a piece of their money too. So it does kind of equate to the niche genres. Yes, it may not feel good to the person who's subscribing to know that $9.99 of their $10 is going to artists that they don't even listen to. But there's also that penny of the 100 million people who don't care about our music that is coming to us.
So feel good about the penny and don't sweat the $9.
Yes.
That's, okay. Yeah.
From an artist standpoint, or as a group, how do we help you? So because we depend, pretty much completely on you guys to make all of this happen for us. So how do we help you help us reach a broader audience? That's for you, Scott.
How did I know? Well, you know what? You're actually doing it. We joke a little bit about metadata. In our building, I am the metadata king. Among all my other tasks at the office, I have to be, responsible for the metadata because I've got someone sitting up in the corner up there who reviews all my metadata, and it better be right. So, but as long as one of the things that we've talked about in our meetings is that lead time. And being able to try to leverage your fans, because when we start looking at your Facebook fans to your Spotify followers, because you've got you guys are doing very well at Spotify. How can we leverage that Facebook fan to become a Spotify follower?
Tell them to listen to Spotify.
But you know what? Sometimes it's going to take, I've heard it said over the past couple of weeks, we got to get at least 4 hits for someone to take action. They got to hear something 4 times before they move. So just keep on doing it. It's going to happen. And yes, you'll be able to ask Alexa for the latest album, and the hits will come up, and it'll all work out great.
I've got two questions. Actually, you go ahead. 2 things. One, Ed, can you repeat what you said earlier with Spotify, that you said that they discontinued their indie relations as far as what was that comment that you?
Yeah, they are going away, probably, again, like I said before, from pressure from the labels and the distributors. They're going away from their artist to Spotify direct ingestion program.
Does that affect the content as far as stories or different things that the artist puts up on their Spotify page and that kind of thing?
I don't think that affects anything like that. That really is, and bringing to your point about how the label can help you. If they ask you for access to certain of your site, your channel, on certain digital service providers, don't be territorial about that, because they're not out there to try and hurt you or put any. It's not a lack of control. It's an ability to help you keep things fresh and keep things, new things up there that you might not have time to do yourself. So I would encourage you to do that. But yes, I think they are.
So they had a direct upload to Spotify, and I think they've since shut that down, and I believe the content is going to come down. And so you probably need to work with your art. If artists have done that directly, they're gonna. I know that they're gonna give them some options, but you're probably gonna need to get all that content's gonna need to get re-uploaded. It's a lot of work to manage a direct feed from indie artists. I can only imagine the curation that had to go on the Spotify side. It's,
Right.
having been at a music service, it's not. I would never have wanted that. It would have been very difficult to manage. So, yeah.
The other question is this: a lot of keys to success in our industry and the success of individual projects, whether it be a label release or an indie release, is based on the marketing and marketing plan that is executed well. I'd love for each of you to comment at least one book or class or piece of marketing wisdom that comes to mind over the years in your experience, whether it be education or in your daily jobs, that has helped you with your jobs or in your clients.
I took a lot of marketing classes in school, and I think it just all goes together. I think that what I try to do is find best practices. You can you can follow. What I did when I first started was I would look in Billboard and see what is the marketing plan for the biggest pop artists on the planet and what can I afford to do, right? So you can't afford to take out ads in Rolling Stone. You can't afford to, nobody's going to give you a network TV special. Nobody's going to play you on a 10 or 100,000 watt FM station in New York City. You can't get that, but you get what you can, right? You look for like things that go to your market and try and do those things and then evaluate them. I think that was one of the keys for our staff too, is that measure what's happening so you know if you're spending $1,000 here and literally you've given them a call to action and you get 3 responses, that's the bad use of $1,000, right? And we don't have a ton of money to spend in marketing in this genre. The sales aren't necessarily at the level where we would all like them to be. So you try things, and then if they don't work, you try something else, and that we've always been really intentional about being a part of different programs and trying different things and exploring ways to get your message and music out to your consumers. And we, of course, the 4 Ps or whatever, we play around with price. We work promotion hard. We are big believers in radio because that's still how people discover Southern gospel music, especially, right? It may not be how they discover pop music as much anymore, although I think it's terrestrial radio and still very valuable. That being AM, FM radio, right? Of course, satellite radio is fantastic, and our consumer has really embraced Sirius XM because they have that enlightened channel that is, in the bluegrass side, Bluegrass Junction, that is for them. Anywhere they go in the United States of America, in their car or on their computer or whatever, they can hear quality Southern gospel programming, right? That's very important. I think it's been great for our genre.
I think something I've definitely learned in your marketing is authenticity of voice for the artist, that being true to themselves really comes through in the message to their audience and creates that real deep connection and love for the artist, where they will go and do the things that you ask them to do. So whenever you're building your marketing plans, for me, when we sit down with the client, we talk about what's your vision for this record? What are some ways we can showcase the artist's personality through the means that we have, through social media, through YouTube, or even in the music and the way that we talk about the music to partners? So trying to come to the core of what is that message around this release and present it authentically to an audience through your marketing is really important if you want that marketing to be effective.
Absolutely. One of the things that we've tried to do, and hopefully successfully, is really to try to come alongside of the artist, to try to figure out what it is that they want to present. We as a record label, we could manufacture things, but if, as you just said, authenticity, how can we take your message and market that on a daily basis? And see, that's the other thing for us is, I've worked at other labels where everything was, led up to the release of the record, and then you don't hear about the group for the next 12 months because the record's out. Okay, what do we need to do? It's really not the case anymore. We've got to put together plans to continually market groups and records on a year-round basis. We haven't always succeeded at that, but we've got plans in place to be able to do that. So, but you asked, I think, about something I've read or whatever. What I'm reading right now, Seth Godin, This is Marketing. Buy it anywhere.
What I found interesting is how you made mention of the fact that in the new digital marketplace, you're doing what you had to do back in the day. You're jockeying for position and trying to outsell the other guy for limited shelf space, just like you were doing at the brick and mortar store.
Well, yeah, in some ways. I mean, Ed and I are friends. Yes, technically we're, competing businesses, but we're friends. And there's always that healthy, friendly competition. Back in the day, okay, who's going to get a family end cap or whatever release, or a Lifeway end cap or whatever. And so you tried, to do whatever you could do. And all of us who were, working at the other companies, we all looked at it as friendly competition. We never, at least my experience was never that it was animosity. Yeah, you kind of curled your nose sometimes when one of your competitors got the end cap that you were shooting for in that month, and they released one of their top records as well. But it's the same thing to me at the DSPs.
And, I think to add on that, to highlight a different perspective, while the featuring is really important on all these services and can really have an impact on a big release, if you're just trying to develop, I'll go back to the personalization on all of these platforms is really important. If you're doing the best practices that any of your distributors or labels can probably tell you, you're building that audience, and those listeners who have a listening profile that matches your music, that are followers of Southern gospel music, they're going to be getting that music. And more of these services, because they have to serve the masses, are developing this personalization to help present music that you as a listener actually want to listen to. So while there is limited shelf space on the featuring, keep in mind, not that many people are actually going to those pages. Of the 100 million subscribers on a service, small amount of foot traffic is going to those genre pages. A lot of them are just going to their home screen. They're searching for music. I think 70% of plays come from the actual album page. So your direct marketing for people to go and look for that music on platform is still really important. You're getting people to feed the algorithms of these services. That's something people like to say a lot. You're getting people to follow them, utilizing the tools that are available to you without the need of editorial support from services is really important to your growth. That should not be dismissed. That it's the end all be all is not being on a playlist. It's, are people getting your music on Friday? Are they getting a notification on their phone where they're engaging with you? And are they listening to it when it comes out? Are they searching for it? Those are still way more important than being on any editorial playlist when you're developing.
It's good advice. Any others?
I know Scott kind of had a targeted message on his presentation, but I know he and Greg were at Music Biz at our last guild meeting. Was there anything you guys took away from that related to the topic of this one or two big takeaways we need to know?
My favorite topic, and everybody in our company has pretty much heard it, was a seminar that a playlist is not a marketing plan. Quite simply. As was said, we've all, for a while, striving to get on those, curated playlists because everyone thought they were the end all be all. They're really not. So what can we do as a label to encourage our artists to interact with their fans through the DSPs? Are you verified at Spotify? You can do things at Spotify. Update your profile. You get new pictures done, put new pictures up right away. It's those things that the same care that you would take with your website, take with your space on Spotify or on Pandora or on Apple. It's got to be a partnership between you as the artist and me as the label to be able to present you in the best light. We need to help give you that guidance because most of the time you're not thinking about that 24/7, where we, with our teams, we have a little bit more time to be able to do that. And that's kind of our charge, is to be able to help you with that, come alongside of it.
It can be overwhelming, right? You're used to dealing with Facebook and perhaps Instagram. Before then, your email list of your fans that you would send an e-blast to or email newsletter. And now you're talking about a whole nother level of involvement and updating and all of that kind of stuff. But the good news is there's really not a ton of relevant digital service providers that you have to pay attention to. There's probably 5 or 6. Okay, that's going to cover 99% of what you do. So you don't. I don't know how many DSPs there are, but there's well over 100 and probably into the hundreds. But you don't have to worry about them really because it's a waste of time to be working with them. So you concentrate on the ones that you have. But the most important thing is where you're driving your fans, right? And don't feel like if you drove them to Google one day, you can't drive them to Apple the next day. Quite the opposite. You've got to keep everybody happy. It's like you have 9 kids, like I do, right? You got to keep everybody happy. And it doesn't take a lot of time every day, but if you neglect it for any amount of time, it's going to be an issue, right? You're going to have to play catch up. So stay on top of it. Look at what other people are doing. Do similar things. We're here to ask and work with and all of that kind of stuff. And there are a lot of professional organizations that help you do this. But ultimately, getting your consumers or getting your followers to follow you at places or getting more people to your concerts, that's all about what? Great music, great songs, right? How you act on stage and how you interact with those people, how much you're willing to travel, if it's great, how much will radio pick it up and celebrate what you're doing, and then the experience that you create live. It really boils down to those core things that make an artist in the first place.
2 questions for you real quick. And next time I'm getting my own mic. It's just going to be easier. I come downstairs, my wife, most times when we're home, she's listening to Spotify, just listening to Southern Gospel. It's on random. And I hear, it can be the Martins. I'll hear out of 60 songs, 40 of them are the Martins. With your connection, how do we adjust that? Because if I'm hearing that, so is Granny Smith in Arkansas. That's all she's hearing. She's listening to Spotify on the Southern Gospel, and that's all we're hearing. It's maybe the Martins this week. It may be Triumphant the next day. It's so artist saturated, you're not getting variety. As a stockholder says.
A lot. So it really depends when you're talking about genre radio stations, what service you're on. So if it's Spotify, it's very likely, unless it's a curated station, it's algorithmically determined. And so some of those same best practices, building up your follower counts, focusing in on songs, working with your distributor to actually make a sales pitch to see if
You're my distributor.
Yeah. Well, then we can have a conversation. I think.
How'd you like that?
And it's interesting too. Like Apple Music, their genre radio stations are really, really more popular than you assume, and those are all hand curated. So it just depends. I think on Spotify specifically, some of those smaller genres, that's a thing where humans could do better than a computer. And I think that's the case that we're seeing. But as we get more audience on these genres on those stations, as they get more data, as they get more plays, that'll level itself out. And they teach the algorithm what should be coming back when they hit play.
Last question, and then me and Linda are going to do Ebony and Ivory over here. It's going to be great. I was told by a guy that works for Ford, they're about ready to start dropping transistor radio stations, and it's going to be all streaming. Have y'all heard anything?
Well, I go back to what I said at the beginning of my presentation, and that is that, yes, there has been a movement toward removing CD players, right? Now, transistor radio, I would find that very hard to do. I've not seen anything on that. The first place you see it is at the Consumer Electronics Show, or see it on a news release or something like that. But that would be I'd be very surprised if they would get rid of terrestrial radio in a Ford. Maybe there's a Alfa Romeo, they get rid of it or something like that. But not a Ford. I would be very surprised. I've not heard.
The other thing is a lot of, I don't know if you have a smart speaker, but a lot of radio stations now are teaching you to, call on Alexa and ask for the call letters of your station. So, as car head units begin to evolve, it's unlikely that terrestrial radio will really go away. It'll just become more of like an iHeart app, or maybe you'll tune in. Like, it's going to take it's such an important part of driving a car. I think it will change, but it'll change the way everything else is changing, that there'll be some substitute for it.
Speaking of music and automobiles, I had the pleasure of driving a Tesla this weekend. Not mine, by the way. Yeah, I wish. They have their own streaming service. Do you see that a trend among the automakers?
Tesla's an interesting case, and they're San Francisco based, so of course they probably launched that. But I think we've seen many people get subscription burnout, I think. So while it might make sense if you're a Tesla owner, you probably bought that subscription when you bought your car, and it's just bundled in. And we did a lot of work at Beats Music where we were partnering with automobile manufacturers so that when you bought a car, you got like a year subscription to Beats Music. So we'll see more of that. But having worked at many standalone music services, they're expensive to run and more than likely just get acquired. So I think that we'll see those things, but people are going to naturally gravitate to the services that they're either already on or got a membership through, because I get free shipping on Prime, so I have Prime. Like, people get burnout on subscriptions. I don't think we're going to see very many individual music services popping up because it's really difficult to compete.
Any empirical data that you're aware of at all that streaming has affected the listenership of terrestrial radio?
I honestly haven't seen anything in writing.
Because you would think with the explosive data that you threw up there, Ed, of how streaming has just exploded, you would think it would have had an adverse effect on listenership, but I didn't know if that was available.
I mean, we see stories of artists who are massively popular without radio because there's options now. There's a whole group of young people coming of age now that have never had a car with a radio or have always had streaming in their car, or like me, maybe plugged in a cassette tape to your phone so that you could listen to your streaming or your iPod through your phone. So there's new markets there, but I think terrestrial radio, as a simplicity's sake, people just want to be able to lean back and tune in and not worry about it. I don't think it's going anywhere. Worst of all.
Any others? Well, we've spent a lot of time without hearing from a professional songwriter. I wish we had one in the room.
I was just meditating on all the positive talk about streaming because my statements have been decimated. And that horse is out of the barn. And it is the future, and I think it's a wonderful product for consumers. And I do have a two-part question. You were talking about the tipping point at satellite radio, and there was like a lot of creative investment, and then at some point it turned, and there was actual revenue. What would you predict or foresee would have to take place at streaming so that the platforms would be incentivized to increase subscription fees? And then part two, what would ever incentivize them
to share the profits with the creators, given that things are going so well for them without sharing.
I'll start in general and then pass it on for more specific. But in general, Amazon lost money hand over fist, hundreds of millions of dollars for years, right? And now they are rolling in it. I mean, rolling in money, like oil companies, really. Oil companies, they'll have their bad years, right, where they'll lose billions of dollars. But in most years, they make tens of billions of dollars, right? I think the same thing will happen to the satellite companies. I think the initial, not satellite, the streaming companies, I think the initial investment has been so large that they lose money. But at some point, all those investments are going to, those initial investments are going to be paid for. And it's going to be not pure profit, but a lot of profit. And so your percentage of what we're dealing on a percentage of revenue basis now, right? Where they've had to kind of swallow a lower number or swallow any number, given that they're losing money. It's kind of hard to swallow, but that's your cost of goods. I mean, that's what you're using to get your subscribers to subscribe in the first place. As that evens out and they have more profitability, not only will they, I don't believe they'll ever say, here, take more money, but there will be people at the door, the major labels being the first ones, to strike deals that are better based on the numbers that these satellite or streaming companies are achieving on a net profit basis. So the money will get better, right? And they will be forced to do something because just the market forces at play. You cannot use my music without, that's the beauty of copyright. You can't use it without a license, right? You cannot use my music without paying me something. We only have this. Okay, well, we'll take this. Well, now you have this. Well, we need to get this, right? You go from here to here because you've gone from here. So market forces will take care of it. How quickly will it happen? Who knows? You know, but it's heading in the right direction.
I can't speak to that, but I think they're already paying a significant amount of license fees out of that subscription amount. And like Ed said, as the services continue to grow and as the deals have to be continually renegotiated, there's opportunity for change. And it's just about continuing advocacy with groups like this to come together as a group and work towards a better option and make your voices heard if it matters. But you know, it's got to be the market that changes it. And right now, it's not been a profitable business to run a standalone music service just due to the high costs of operation and licensing and growth and going global. So we'll have to watch to see how it changes and make sure you stick up when you have an opportunity to do so.
So you talked about those people coming to the door. I'm sorry, Scott, did you have something to add to that? You come to the door, these market forces are coming to the door when the DSPs start making more, saying that the creative side needs to be compensated more. That will happen. Who will those people be that are knocking on that door and saying, time to pay?
Well, it'll start with, number one, they're paying now, but time to pay more, right?
Correct, that's what I mean.
It starts with, you know, your major labels. So it starts with Sony, it starts with Universal, it starts with Warner. They kind of set the tone. On the independent side, there's a company called Merlin that handles all of the independent record companies and artists and things like that. So they're kind of like a fourth major. Mm-hmm. Well, those people are all in separate negotiations. It's not done by individual, thus market forces, right? You've got, and they don't disclose necessarily what they get, although there's such things as most favored nations clauses where you can say, hey, don't pay them more than you pay me. If I find that out, I want to get paid what the top dollar is. You know, it gets negotiated like that. Now, on the publishing side, part of what the Music Modernization Act does is gives those copyright, the rate courts, the ability to use a broader evidence of market-based deals. So if you're arguing for more money, you come in and say, well, they paid these people this kind of money. You know, they paid the artist side this kind of money. Why are you paying the writers, 1/10 of that? Shouldn't it be either equal or half or something more than what you're paying? More than 1/10. And to have that evidence be able to be heard by those judges is very important and a big part of how songwriters will benefit more in the future than they have in the past from these rate court decisions.
There's a case before the rate court now, is there not?
There's an appeal in front of the rate court now. Spotify, Pandora, everybody but Apple, basically, went back and appealed the rate court ruling that gave songwriters a very substantial raise. As you would expect, the shareholders would probably be really upset if they didn't appeal it, if there was an opportunity that they didn't appeal. But it certainly does not make any of us happy, right? So like Joseph Habedank is a songwriter, singer-songwriter. He just put his music out on Apple because they were not suing for it, just to make a statement. Now, will he go back to putting his music on the other services? Well, of course, at some point, I'm sure he will. But he chose to make a statement, and we supported him in it. And his product came out on Apple, but did not come out on Spotify. He's got his catalog there, but the new product, he made a statement about it. So, our voices can be heard. I think that's the one cool thing about advocacy and advocacy is not just to Congress or to your local representatives. It's the power of the consumer to entities like Spotify and to entities like Apple and SiriusXM, and they listen. They listen to when consumers call and say, "Hey, I love my SiriusXM Enlighten station. I love that station. Thank you for supporting Southern gospel music. I subscribe because of it." They love that kind of stuff. And on the negative side, if you're going to criticize them for something, they listen. They don't like a bad phone call any more than you would.